All right, good to see everybody here this morning. Today is a national holiday.
Oh, no.
What? Today is National Missing Tar Heel Fans Awareness Day. Did anybody, y'all didn't know that? Mike's celebrating it with the right. No, I'm just kidding. I don't want to sow any disunity. All right, so just a quick review of last night. Last night we talked about and introduced really two essential topics. One, not that these are non-essential topics, right? The first one was challenges to unity. And what were some of those challenges that we talked about last night? Anybody remember? Me, right? Because after all, the one thing I love about me is me. What else is a challenge that we talked about last night? Do what? Okay, unity. What's a challenge to that?
Enemies.
Okay, enemies. We talked about our enemies. We talked about our backgrounds, right? No two people have the same exact background or life experiences. Religious beliefs also play a part in unity. Political slants play a part in unity. And past grievances that have not been resolved play a part in unity. That was the first session. The second session, we talked about your relationship with Jesus and how that plays out in unity. That if I'm going to know Jesus and not just know facts about Jesus, I have to have what? Starts with an R. Relationship. There we go. We are awake this morning. Hey, baby girl, what's going on? She's wide awake. Sorry, I can't help it. Do what? Rivalry. That's one of them that's there too. And so we noted that there's a difference between knowing facts about somebody and actually knowing somebody. And that when we get to know Jesus Christ, there's some things that He calls us to do that might put us in awkward spots and situations, and there are certain groups of people, even within our own walls, that He calls us to know. Not just to know facts about, but to know. So that was kind of an overview of last night. This morning I want to ask kind of a weird question. Yes. Anybody ever had wrist surgery or something like that? Yeah. There you go. Or maybe something like that. Now, what's the difference between, in that second picture, what's the difference between the picture on the left and the right?
That is before with the stitches and everything.
Yeah.
It's after healing.
Before and after. And I want to ask a question. For each one of those people, they ever going to forget that surgery? Why? Scars, right? Some of the scars that are left. I mean, I've got a scar on my stomach from a training accident in the Marine Corps, and no matter how long I live, every time I see that scar, I will think about what? What happened? What happened there? And that's the interesting thing, about scars. While the initial wound might be healed, right? There's always going to be the scar. And every time we look at the scar, and every time we examine the scar, and every time someone else sees the scar, what are they going to ask? What happened? And what are we going to do? We're going to tell them exactly what happened. And now that might be good for surgeries, but is that necessarily good for unity? This guy right here, Jay Williams, it's a great story. It goes in. It had nothing to do with today. I promise. Jay Williams was one of the best point guards to ever play college basketball. In 2001 or 2002, he got drafted number 1 overall by the Chicago Bulls in 2001. Everybody said that he was going to be the guy that was going to take the Bulls, back to the promised land, so to speak. They hadn't won anything since Jordan retired, and he was the guy. April 2002. Not licensed, not wearing a helmet, put a Yamaha motorcycle into a light post. Fractured his femur, towards MCL, severe nerve damage, was never the same. Was never the same. And so before that, everybody asked him, man, what's it like to be on the Bulls? What's it like to be playing, kind of in the shadow of Michael Jordan? How can you help, the Bulls? What do you expect later down the line? Where do you see your career 10 years from now after the accident? What happened? And he would go on to write a memoir a couple years ago. And in it, he would say that every time that he saw, or every time that he was asked that question, he can remember feeling thoughts of depression, of suicide. And the first thing that he said in the hospital as they carted him back for surgery was, I threw it all away. And whether Jay Williams likes it or not, every time people talk about this man, and every time they do an interview with this guy one-on-one, what are they going to ask about? That accident. That accident is a part of him. Always will be. And there's nothing that he can really do to escape that fact. But what he also did is he didn't allow the scar tissue, in his life to always be the main issue. He went on to write a memoir, and he's now on College Game Day serving as an analyst for ESPN. And while I'm sure he would like to be in the NBA, he also says, you know what? I really do love and enjoy covering college basketball. Who changed it? You are such a punk. Such a punk. I will get you for that. I will, my friend. He did it to me again. Noted. All right. Now that Brett has successfully sown disunity between two brothers, we've all experienced life events that have damaged us and scarred us. Whether you know that or not, I'm sure you do because you've experienced it. Whether you want to accept that or not, it has happened. And so every time that you encounter somebody, someone, or a similar experience, you are going to remember it. One of the experiences that I will never be able to live down is the fact that at 7 years old, I was upset with my mom and my dad, who are, I don't know if you know this about me, I'm adopted, and I looked at my mom and said, I want to go to my real parents. I'll never forget it. Never forget it, can't take it back. And so we got 5 minutes down the road, and I said, this is not a good idea. I want to come back home because you're taking me to people I've never met. So let's just stay where we are. Right? Sometimes these events involve our brothers and sisters in Christ. It's not just always the people at work. It's not just always the people in family. It's not just always people at school. Sometimes it's the closest people to us in the place that's supposed to be most secure. The place that's supposed to be most open and most honest, right? And that takes place. Can you think of any examples in the Bible in which there was some scarred tissue between family, between friends? David and Absalom, okay. Someone else said what was the other one that said? Jacob and Esau. That's the most famous one. That's between two brothers. Modern day example of that would probably be Dean and Dustin Meadows. It's not that bad. There's my first one, Jacob and Esau, right? And then you got David and Saul. Who else? Okay, Joseph and his brothers. Cain and Abel. How about Jesus and Peter? Scar tissue there. How about Paul and John Mark? Issues there? Yeah, you better believe it. And while this isn't an exhaustive list, we're going to look at these examples and we're going to see, because I really think that there's a contrast between the first two and the second two. And that'll help us in dealing with some of our scarred tissue, some of our moments of conflict that we have with people that are most closest to us in the church that can help us create a culture of unity and not division. All these relationships mentioned have a common denominator: personal pain. And what is it? I mean, not just pain in general. See, we're okay most of the time, or we can handle most of the time. We can navigate everybody else's pain, right? I can navigate, Graham's pain when Graham's hurting. Why? Because that's not who? That's not me. You see a common denominator here? You see a common theme here? Is that most of the time when there's issues of conflict and there's issues of disunity, it usually comes back to me. I can handle Graham's pain and I can handle your pain because I'm not going through it. It's not me. But when it's me, what? Huh? Look out. Stand by, right? The world is falling apart if it's me. All right, so Genesis chapter 25, 29 through 34. Kirk, will you move there? You're my favorite father-in-law. Will you move there, get there, and read that, please? Yeah.
Stew. And Esau came in from the field and he was weary. And Esau said to Jacob, "Please feed me with that same red stew, for I'm weary." Therefore his name was called Edom. Jacob said, "Sell me your birthright as of this day." Esau said, "Look, I'm about to die. What's this birthright to me?" Jacob said, "Swear to me as of this day." So he swore to him, sold his birthright to Jacob. And Jacob gave Esau bread, a stew of lentils. Then he ate, drank, rose, and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright.
All right, so how much did it cost Esau? What did it cost Esau? Huh? Everything, his birthright. Now, why, in that culture, why is birthright important? We don't really talk in those terms, today. I would never go up to my brother and say, "I'll trade you this jacket for your birthright." Right? We don't usually use those terms. So what's so important about that? Why is that even a big issue? So everything his father had went to him. And so what did Esau ask in return? Bowl of soup for everything. Now, here's usually what takes place when we have conflict and when we do things that cause division. We trade in everything for nothing. I mean, Esau walked in on his own 2 feet under his own power, and he literally said, "I'm famished." Some translations say, "I'm hungry and I'm about to die." Now, is that the truth? No. He did what? He blew things what? Out of proportion. When there's conflict, usually one, if not both people, blow things out of proportion. And then it costs both people something. What did Esau in? His appetite. And whether you know it or not, we all have appetites. Some of us, our appetite is to make progress in life, make progress in our job, and make progress in our family. Socioeconomically, we want to make progress. So progress can be an appetite. Some of us have an innate an appetite to always be the winner. Always be the winner. And I'm not just talking about friendly competition. If there's a question on the floor about, hey, which direction should we go? This is how I see it, and I've got to win. We see this in corporate America all the time. What will a corporation do to be the winner? Anything, as long as they don't get caught. Right? I can do what I want, when I want, how I want, with whom I want, as long as I don't either hurt anybody or get caught. Appetite to win. Be accepted. Anybody here, roll out of bed in the morning and say, you know what, today I hope I engage about 50 people today and nobody accepts me. I mean, we all felt this in high school. We all wanted to be accepted in high school. And to a certain degree, even now, you want to be accepted by your peers. And sometimes we appease to the point where we give away everything just to be accepted. Just to be accepted. Recognition. You know what I want people to know about me? Me. I want them to know how great I am and how talented I am and how skilled I am. I don't necessarily care that if it hurts somebody else or if it damages the overall unity of the organization, as long as the spotlight is here. Right? And that's what feeds me. That's why I do what I do. Not solely just to help somebody, but I want to help somebody so that at the end of the day, someone can come up to me, pat me on the back, and tell me how great I am. That will cause a problem. That will be an issue. And that will scar someone. And it might even scar you. Stuff. I mean, really, when you look at Esau's blunder, stuff. Bowl of porridge. Bowl of porridge. That's all it was. I'm hungry. I need this now, and I'll give up everything that I could ever get in the future for immediate satisfaction. Some people are willing to give up unity and the relationship between a brother and a sister for instant gratification, not worried about the things that happen down the line. What's the ultimate end point if I make this decision? That's one of the questions that we have to ask when we're dealing with brothers and sisters. If I say this, or if I do this, what is the end result, possibly? I really do think that the reason that there's disunity and conflict between brothers and sisters, because we don't ask that question. What's the question we ask? What are some of the questions we ask in the now, right? I want mine, and I want it now. Instant gratification. All right, so let me ask this question. What ultimately took place between Jacob and Esau's descendants? Let me ask another question before we answer that. How long did Jacob and Esau go before they finally had a face-to-face conversation? Anybody know? 20 years. Brothers. I mean, as much as me and my brother fight and argue and compete, I couldn't imagine going 20 years and not talking the issue out. And so multiple things take place, and it's 20 years. And anybody remember how Esau approaches Jacob? How many people travel? How many people travel with Esau to meet Jacob? Anybody remember? 400. Why did he travel 400 people? Do what? Yeah, thought he was going to kill him. So he said, hey, guess what? I'll go meet him, but we might get into a scuffle here, and we might get into a fight. Notice the mindset of Esau. Esau loses the fact that that's his brother on the other side. It's no longer his brother, it's his what? Enemy. enemy. And so he says, hey, he's potentially my enemy. I'm going to go out here and meet him. And I'm going to bring the cavalry with me just in case things get a little bit nasty. We cannot lose sight, even in the midst of conflict, that the person on the other end is my brother and my sister. Can't lose sight of that. Because once we start gathering armies, it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad.
Being the scary thing with that, you alluded to it last night, our personal decisions affect so many more people. Maybe they shouldn't at times, but with Jacob and Esau, it affected nations.
Yeah.
Just two people.
Two people affected nations. Anybody remember what happened when God's people were taken into captivity, what the Edomites did? The Edomites stood by and watched their brothers who were descendants by blood. And you know what they said? The psalmist writes that they said by, and they said, lay it bare, lay it bare, lay it bare. Instead of petitioning God and asking, hey, can we come to their aid, they celebrated their demise. And we may not stand up front in the middle of the church building and say, lay it bare, lay it bare, lay it bare. But when we got a brother or sister who we view as the enemy and they fail, we say, yes, I'm happy that they didn't succeed. And so, wait, hold up. Weren't we supposed to be together on this? Right? Weren't we supposed to be unified in this effort, right? And so that's what happened with their descendants. Now that's a funny illustration, but it's a serious point. It's a serious point. I want to ask you a question. Have you ever experienced, and this is a rhetorical question, I don't need any answers here. You ever experienced a situation where one congregation won't work with another congregation because something happened 30 years ago? Or people do that? I would venture to say there are probably people in every congregation to an extent, I would say maybe every congregation, that they won't talk and they won't work with or they won't talk to somebody because of something that happened a decade ago, 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago. Back when mommy and pappy were, and grandma and grandpa. I don't talk to that person because, 30 years ago, grandma had a spat with her and I don't even know her name, but I'm just not going to talk to anybody that's related to her because after all, my family's got a conflict with them and I don't even know what it is. I just know I'm not supposed to like them. I mean, do you think any of the descendants of Jacob and Esau knew that Jacob and Esau got over it? They probably said, actually, the only thing they focused on, the only way they could sit by and say, lay it bare, lay it bare, lay it bare, is if they told the story of the transgression and not of the healing. It's the only way that could happen. Questions, comments before we move on about Jacob and Esau? Anything? All right, David and Saul. As they were coming home when David returned from striking down the Philistine. What Philistine? Goliath, right? The woman came out of the cities of Israel singing and dancing to meet King Saul with tambourines, with songs of joy, with musical instruments. Saul was very angry. This refrain displeased him greatly. They credited David with tens of thousands, he thought, but me with only thousands. What more can he get but the kingdom? Remember that? They sang a song that said, Saul has slain his thousands, but David is tens of thousands. Right? And so Saul's mindset is what? Jealousy. Issue in unity? Now, let me ask this question. Why do we get jealous of people who are on our side? I got to win, right? I've got to be it. Okay, what else? Why else?
Some people like control so much that they can't handle it when somebody else has done something better than them.
They can't handle somebody doing something better than them. Let me ask you a question. In this story about David and Goliath, did Saul say, "I'll do it"?
He put his armor on David.
He put his armor on David, right? See, sometimes I think we're jealous because people that do things like David, they reveal something about our character that we don't like. David's bravery was a contrast to Saul's cowardice. And so was David justified in getting the credit for killing the Philistine? Absolutely. But Saul wanted the credit because, after all, he was the scared king. And so jealousy isn't just necessarily somebody doing something better than me. Sometimes it's, man, what they've done shows something about my character that I can't handle. That I can't handle. Right? And that leads to division. That painting right there is, and we see this multiple times, that Saul literally tries to pin David to the wall on some issues. Literally. Now notice this. In 1 Samuel chapter 24, 1 and 2. When Saul returned from following the Philistines, he was told, "Behold, David is in the wilderness," and I don't even know, in Gedi. There you go, in Gedi. Then Saul took 3,000 chosen men out of all Israel and went to seek David and his men in front of the wild goats' rocks. Now, he had just come back from doing what? Chasing who? And who are the Philistines? Kumbaya. Right? No. They are the enemy. And what did he do with David? What did he do with David? Somebody said David's in the where? Knocking on the front gate of the kingdom. David is seeking to come in and take this place by himself. No, where's David? In the wilderness. Is David a threat to Saul in the wilderness? Not a chance. There is nothing about that scenario that screams out, David is coming for the kingdom. And what did Saul do? He went after him as if he were what? An enemy. In Saul's eyes, he saw the Philistines the same as he saw David. They were one in the same. They were one in the same. And so, when we get jealous of people, one of the things that's going to cause division is when we see people the same way we see our enemies. Our enemies. And he took 3,000 men. 3,000. Chose them, handpicked them, to go run after some guy in the wilderness that's hiding in a place called Wild Goats Rocks. Yes.
Straight out of the Westerns.
Straight out of the Westerns, man. Straight out of the Westerns. And so let me ask this question. How do we get to that point? Why do we get to that point? I know it's jealousy, but how does Saul get from being chosen by God to seeing David as somebody that needs to be pursued just like the Philistines?
Saul's listening to his counselors.
Okay?
There's a reference to the fact that David's gathered a big following. You need to worry about that instead of really. Saul should have known David. They had somewhat of a relationship.
They did.
So he's listening to folks instead of listening to his own heart.
Okay, so Saul's listening to who? People, right? Listening to God much this time in his life? Remember when he was told to destroy the Amalekites? What happened? What did he do? God said to destroy what? All of it. What did Saul do? Kept some of it. And then when God said, "Hey, what have you done here? What's wrong here?" He said, oh, we did kill all of it. Right? He rationalized away following God. He rationalized away reasons why he shouldn't have listened to God. And so because he didn't listen to God and he listened to people, let me ask this other question. How many times did David and Saul actually sit down and try and hash things out? Did Saul ever really care about hashing things out with David? Nope. Never cared. And so you can go through the motions of reconciliation and still not have the heart for it. What takes place right after this scene? Saul goes, pretty funny, Saul goes to relieve himself, and David's men say, this is the time to do what? Kill him. Saul's men say, go into the wilderness and kill him. And Saul says, okay. David's men say, now's the time, kill him. And what does David say? I will not put my hands on the Lord's anointed. When we don't listen to what the Lord says about how to treat brothers and sisters, we will listen to another voice. And it will not be God's voice. It will be people who are after, usually, their own interest. Their own interest. Let me ask you a question. When you have conflict within the walls of wherever you are, who do you listen to? Who do you listen to? Because who you listen to will influence what you do. Who you listen to will influence what you do. All right, when our appetites get the best of us, we will view our own brothers and sisters as though they're enemies. We've talked about that. Saul was driven by the scarred tissue of the fact that David slayed Goliath and he wasn't able to. He didn't like David because something that had happened in the past. In the past. All right, Jesus and Peter. That's them having a meal right there. This old painting. All right, John 18, 15 through 27. Will somebody read that for me? Famous passage. Actually, I'll ask Rob Albright if he'll read that for me. I know, baby. I don't like Carolina either. That's a joke. We'll just say NC State. How's that? Anybody NC State fans anywhere? Okay, good. We're all right. We can be unified on that. Oh, she goes there. Gotcha. 18, 15 through 27.
Simon Peter followed Jesus, so did another disciple. Now that disciple was known to the high priest and went with Jesus into the courtyard of the high priest. Peter stood at the door outside. Then the other disciple, who was known to the high priest, went out and spoke to her, who kept the door, and brought Peter in. And then the servant girl who kept the door said to Peter, You are not also one of this man's disciples, are you? He said, I'm not. Now the servants and the officers who made fire of the coals stood there, for it was cold, and they warmed themselves. And Peter stood with them and warmed himself. The high priest then asked Jesus and his disciples about his doctrine. Jesus said, I spoke openly to the world. I also taught the synagogues and in the temple where the Jews also always met. And in secret I said nothing. Why do you ask me? Ask those who have heard me what I said to them. Indeed, they know what I said. And when he had said these things, one of the officers who stood by struck Jesus with the palm of his hand, saying, Do you answer the high priest like this? And Jesus answered, If I have spoken evil, bear witness of the evil. But if well, why do you strike me? Then Annas sent him bound to Caiaphas, the high priest. Now Peter stood and warmed himself. Therefore they said to him, You were not also one of his disciples, are you? He denied it and said, I am not. One of the servants of the high priest, a relative of him, whose whose ear Peter cut off said, did I see you in the garden with him? Peter denied again, and immediately a rooster crowed.
Every time that I hear that and I read that, I just feel for Peter. Let me ask this question. What influenced Peter to deny Jesus? Huh? His life? Okay, fear? Fear of what? Fear of his life? Because he had just seen what take place? He had just seen Jesus what?
Jesus taken in the garden.
He had just seen him taken. I mean, he's the guy that, lopped off the ear of the high priest servant, right? And so, what is it about fear that causes us to maybe sometimes sell out our brothers and sisters? Fear of what? Fear of, acceptance is one of them. If I want to be accepted by this group of people or this clique over here in the congregation, then if they ask me about so-and-so, who I have a pretty good relationship about, well, I just got to go with the crowd on that, right? Isn't it interesting, in this situation, Jesus is the one that says, I've spoken openly. If you have any questions about me, ask my people. And then out of fear, somebody literally asks Peter, you know him? Peter says, don't know him. And who did Peter deny Jesus to? One of them was a servant girl. Not a big army of soldiers. A servant girl. Out of fear. The world around Peter influenced him to go against what he knew to be true. The culture in that specific situation influenced Peter to deny what he knew to be true. So, how does church culture play into unity or disunity? It's clear that the culture here around Peter, around this scene, is not very inviting for Peter to be faithful to Jesus. So culture plays a part, we've talked about this, in church unity. And sometimes one of the biggest factors to unity or disunity is church culture. What's a church culture that invites unity? Apparently nothing. No. What are some of the trademarks of a church that is unified? Okay, love. Agape love, right? What's agape love?
A decision made to love because you.
A decision made to love, right? But what is agape love? What does that mean? What does agape mean? What is agape love? How can we express it if we don't know what it means? Unconditional, deep love, self-sacrificial love. That's what that is. And it's clear at this point in Peter's walk, did he have that?
Peter's struggle is, I thought when you were talking last night, you were talking about our enemies and the fact that Jesus intermingled, had relationships with individuals, established conversations. And you asked a legitimate question last night and started to respond to it. We're taught, at least I was, be careful who you're with. And it's an influence factor. There's a moment in our lives when we get to the point that we're not the influence, but we're the influencer. Mm-hmm. And that's the transition that we make. The scriptures give a picture of what happens to Peter that night. The further he gets from Jesus, the easier it is to deny. And that's a proximity thing, it's
Yeah.
a physical thing. But there's also a spiritual component in that.
No doubt.
If I don't sense his presence, if I can't see him, and then because right at the end, in Luke's account,
He looks at him. They make eye contact.
which had to be one of the most horrendous moments for Peter.
No doubt.
He hadn't seen, I don't know what all being,
Yeah.
we don't have the visual. But evidently at that point he kind of stayed out of his sight,
Yeah.
whatever was going on. But at that moment, when the rooster crows, they look eye to eye, and it's almost like, he told me I was going to do this.
He told me I was going to do it. Yeah. And the question that I always ask you, and here's how it differentiates between Saul and then Jacob and Esau. In John 21:59, how long Jesus and Peter wait to have a conversation about it? And what did Jesus say to Peter? Did Jesus walk up to Peter and say, "You bumbling buffoon, I can't believe that you did that"?
All it took was a look at that time.
Yeah. But when Jesus is resurrected and he has, pretty much breakfast with the disciples, I think Peter knows we're about to have a conversation.
Can we talk?
Yeah, it's one of those, hey, we got to talk. And what does Jesus say? You are such an idiot, Peter. I can't believe that you stuck your foot in your mouth, and this is something that you've always done, and this is something you're always going to do. Is that what he said? No. What did he say? He essentially said through a series of questions, I love you. And you might not know it right now, but you're going to serve me. And you're going to serve me where you failed here. You will succeed here. You are going to give your life for me. And so when we find ourselves in conflict and disunity, what we need to do is not bring up the past. We need to bring up the situation that's at the present that's caused the division. But you can't sit here and say, and let's just use a hypothetical here, you can't say, I am so mad at you because last Sunday, you cut me off in the parking lot and I tried to say something to you and you didn't even acknowledge me. Oh yeah? Well, guess what? You did the same thing to me 20 years ago. We're laughing because that's how we handle it. I'm justified in what I do because you've done it to me way back here, regardless of the fact that I just wronged you right here. Peter wronged Jesus in the past. And when Jesus comes before Peter, he doesn't say, you're an idiot for doing this back here. Because Peter already knows. It's one of the things in the way in which we handle disunity. When someone does us wrong, most of the time, they know it. And what Jesus does is beautiful because he says, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? And he says, you are going to succeed where you failed previously. That's how we need to handle conflict. Just for the sake of time, we're running out of time here. Same thing with John, Mark, and Paul. What did John Mark do? Paul's missionary journey. He and Barnabas wanted to go out. And what did he do? Failed. He turned away. Fractured the relationship between Paul and Barnabas. But in 2 Timothy chapter 4:11, we see him mention John Mark, which means at some point that relationship was healed. That relationship was healed. So, reflection questions before we end the first session. Do you find yourself consistently talking about all the wrong things that have happened to you? Do you not participate in certain church functions because of past grievances? Do you fail to use your skills, talents, abilities for the church if that person or people is involved over the operation? If we find ourselves answering to all of those yes, yes, and yes, that's an issue. That's a problem. That will sow seeds of disunity. Because if all I ever do is talk about all the things that I've been wronged about, number one, people are not going to want to talk to me. And number two, I'll never be able to move forward. I'll never be able to move forward. And I'll show you this one story. And Brett, if you could you not record this part?